Hey guys, how you doing today? This is David Lucas back here again. Welcome back to my channel. And now today, I'm back here again, guys, to give you guys another review. And in this review, I'm going to be giving you guys my basically thoughts and review on the first season of The Bad Batch. Yes, guys, The Bad Batch is the other Star Wars series that's been out right now. And if you guys remember, back like a couple months ago, I did a review of the first couple episodes of The Bad Batch. And if you guys want to check out my first thoughts on the first couple episodes, what my first initial thoughts were, go check that out on my channel. It's right there on my channel. Just go check out that video if you want to check out my initial thoughts on the series. And now, last Friday, this season, the first season at least, which because it was announced that season 2 is coming, the first season was finally finished of The Bad Batch last Friday. And yeah, I got some thoughts on the whole series, or well, the whole first season as a whole. So here are my thoughts on it. Now, you know in my reviews, I usually start with the good and to the bad on my reviews. So let's start off by saying what were some things that I think was good in this first season. What was my standouts of the first season? And right off the bat, I gotta say that this first season of The Bad Batch is probably the best first season of any Star Wars animated, at least, TV show. The first, seasons of, the Clone Wars and even Rebels, I mean, they were both good. They were both okay. They kept you engaged at the end. They kept you interested in going back to the second season. But as a whole, they were just okay first seasons. Bad Batch first season is probably on par with Rebels Season 2 or Clone Wars Season 3. It's up there with, the better seasons of those shows. And it's just the first season. So I gotta say, right off the bat, it's the best first season of the show. Something else, too, in its first season that I was hearing some complaints about during as, the series was going on by episode. And some of those complaints that I kind of don't agree with is that some people were complaining that they didn't like those cameos. They didn't like some of the cameos of past characters that we already know coming in here, and some people weren't liking that. Some people were thinking they diverged away from the Bad Batch, but in my opinion, I actually really liked it a lot. And in my opinion, I felt like it kind of made the galaxy a little bit more bigger. It made it more seem like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense these people will be around right now because it's right at the ending of the Clone Wars. It's literally weeks after the Clone Wars. So seeing people like Cad Bane, or like Saw Gerrera, or even the twins, those two twins, the Rafa twins, I think they're called, from the Clone Wars season, the last season of Clone Wars, which I honestly did not really like their arc that much. But I gotta say, in this show, they did it pretty alright in the show. We even see Rex sometimes show up in this show, which is cool, and even Tarkin too, and all those characters that do end up showing up in here do make sense, all the ones make sense for this timeline, for this period, that they would appear and would show up in here, and I really like that. To me, it makes it feel more connected, it makes it feel more real, yeah, it would make sense for these characters to pop up right here in this moment, and I like that the right characters pop up, because they don't give you everyone, they don't give you every person just right off the bat. Oh, here's a whole bunch of characters that we know from there. No, they do it very, very sparingly. We have a little bit of Saw Gerrera. We have a little once of Hera from setting up where she goes to in Rebel. There's little connections that I like, and it makes the world feel all connected. It makes it all feel like everything counts and everything kind of matters, and I like that a lot. To me, as a Star Wars fan, I like that. Loved in the series too how we did get into something I was really excited for when I very first heard about the Bad Batch and where it was going to take place. Something I was really looking forward to is seeing kind of the fall of the Republic and the rise in the first days of the Empire, because this takes place literally right as Order 66 happens, and then it jumps kind of literally right to the end of Revenge of the Sith and then onward. So we're right there, weeks, maybe a couple months after Revenge of the Sith. So we're right there in the very beginning stages of the Empire, when people didn't really even know what the Empire necessarily was at first. I like too how we're seeing how certain different worlds and different governments are reacting to it differently. We see a little bit on Seleucami where people are somewhat supporting the Empire. It seems like they don't hate it, but they don't like it there. It seems like there are some people trying to get out and some people in there. We run into Cut, who was one of the deserter clone troopers from the Clone Wars series, which was really cool to see him. And then we end up seeing now the Empire is implementing some kind of like chain code type of thing, which was mentioned earlier on in The Mandalorian. We heard that word chain code, and now we see what the chain code is. It's basically like a social security thing for the Empire, for Star Wars, like the version of that. We start seeing them basically, you know, numbering people now, and that's kind of what we see. Start seeing how certain worlds, like I think Pantora, we see they accept the Empire, they like it. They're throwing a parade for the clone troopers. They're throwing parade, putting Imperial flags up. They're cheering it on. They're cheering on Vice Admiral Rampart's speech about getting your chain codes, you know. And we go to Ryloth and a former Separatist planet, Raxus, was the capital of Raxus, and we see those two places aren't accepting the Empire. They are being a little bit, you know, hard to favor over. Even though one of them has their senators and stuff like that. And we start seeing how the Empire now is starting to take away, you know, military rights to other planets. And start taking away freedom of speech. If you speak up against the Empire, you get basically taken out. And I like seeing how we're seeing it start up now. And it is really cool. And that's something I've always, even from when I was a little kid watching Attack of the Clones and then watching the original series, that reminded me of, you know, that's something I wanted to see. I wanted to see what was it like the first days of the Empire. How did the public look at it? And we get that a little bit in here. Also love, too, the character depth that we've been given to these characters. Well, at least almost of the characters. I'm going to get onto a little bit of that. But at least most of the time, most of the characters, like Wrecker and Hunter and Crosshair, you know, they're getting a lot of character depth and a lot more character into them, especially Crosshair and Hunter. I feel like they are really got like the big ideals. Like Hunter is very idealistic one way, and then you got Crosshair who's very the other way, and you see how Crosshair is the one that betrays them. Well, not necessarily betrays them, but he ends up going over to the Empire, and they end up going away, and I like that. I like seeing the character development, especially in Crosshair, because we end up learning near like the last episodes of this season that Crosshair removed his chip a long time ago, and he is not acting from within the chip. This is who he wants. This is what he believes in. This is what he wants. He believes in the Empire. He believes, he mentioned the word superior, that he's superior. He has that supremacy coming in him. And I like that. I like how we're starting to now see the more ideals of Crosshair, which kind of makes sense when you go looking back onto the original Clone Wars Season 7, when we first were introduced to the Bad Batch. Crosshair was a little, because they were a little bit one note in Clone Wars, but Crosshair always did have that kind of like, not necessarily rebel kind of thing, kind of more like, he was different than the others. Like, he kind of was more like, he was the more soldier of the soldiers, you know what I mean? They were more independent, they were more their own people, but Crosshair was more of a soldier, and we see that built upon her, where he does, he mentions good soldiers follow orders, but when he says it this time, it's not necessarily in like a trance way. It's more just like serious, like soldiers are supposed to follow orders, and that's what I'm doing. I am serving the Empire. He's like, the Republic was failure. It was a failure. No one could protect the Republic. Now the Empire is in, and we are the ones protecting and stuff. And I like seeing ideal. Then you see Hunter, where Hunter just wants to survive. He wants to take his team, and he starts seeing the Empire. At first, he doesn't really care about the Empire. He just wants to ignore it. But then he starts seeing more and more, like on the Ryloth episodes, and that the Empire isn't really good. And the Empire isn't really the Republic at all. And you start seeing that with Hunter, where he starts realizing that, yeah, this Empire stuff is not good. And they have a discussion in the middle, like at the ending of the show, where actually I really liked that they were, you know, conflicting ideals, Hunter and Crosshair. Even Wrecker, too. I really like Wrecker. He's kind of reminds me of, like, a little bit like Drax a little bit. I love Wrecker. I really liked in the show seeing the Empire move away from the clone troopers into the regular conscripted recruits, the regular people that we end up seeing in the original trilogy as stormtroopers. And I like that. I like how we see and hear that Rampart and Tarkin both kind of feel like the clones are kind of a cost-prohibitive relic of the past, and that would be more cheaper, and you can produce more soldiers and loyaler soldiers within, you know, the Empire, which is regular recruits. And we end up seeing where they start now going forward with this, because we see that there are some clones that it is really interesting that don't like the Empire. and they have the chip in them and all that, but they just straight up just feel like the Empire is wrong. And we've seen some episodes where like a clone like Hauser, which I really loved, and Hauser, he ends up standing up against the Empire, and he ends up speaking up against the Empire, a clone trooper, a literal clone trooper. And of course he gets arrested, but he ends up having people follow him. He ends up having people agreeing with him, other clones. And yeah, of course he does get arrested and probably most likely executed, but I like that now we're seeing, oh, this is part of the reason why the Empire moved away from the clones, because some of the clones were like, this is not right. This is not what we were fighting for. And they started realizing that. And I like, too, seeing, like, one episode where we see, like, the prototype, almost, Stormtrooper armor. I really like that. It looks like the old Ralph McQuarrie type of armor that he drew, like, his old concept designs. I love that. Now, someone, too, that I really want to talk about, that I really loved, and which is a big standout of this series and season, is Omega. Yes, guys, Omega is the new character that we see in here, that we're introduced here. She starts out with a lot of mystery at first. We don't really know much of her. We don't know much of her past or who she is or what she is. And, you know, we end up through the series, we end up learning more about her. We learn that she is a clone, in fact, of Jango Fett. She's another member of the Bad Batch. She is the other fifth member, because Echo isn't necessarily a Bad Batch member. So she was the fifth creation. And we end up learning, too, that she's actually older than the clones, and that she's Boba Fett's sister, basically. And we end up learning that through the show, and we end up learning a lot of her. And not just that of her, but she does have some heart to her. She has some character to her. She has some sweetness to her that is very different from when we very first were introduced to the other characters of the animated shows. Like when Ahsoka was first introduced, she was really annoying at first. When Ezra was first introduced, he was kind of annoying at first. But when Omega, she doesn't have that annoyance. She actually has that heart to her. She has that cuteness to her. She has that kind of like, you know, like you are excited to see her and you understand her and some of the stuff that she does. And we kind of see her growing up. And I liked how we see her from where she was in the very first episode to the last episode, how much she's actually grown from in that short time. And I'm really interested in what their plans are for Omega going in the future, because it seems like they are teasing that she has something big planned going into the future, and I can't wait to see what they have planned for it. One last thing, too, I want to mention that I really liked of this series is the whole visuals. Just the visuals of this is just top-notch, probably the best visuals in any animated series, I think, to date. It is just so beautiful and so great. At times, it looks like you're watching a live-action movie, and it's all animated, and it's just done so beautifully and so perfect. I feel like every season is just going to get better and better to the point maybe where it looks exactly like live action. Now, I do have some complaints about this series, even though I did really love this series. Some of my complaints about that I gotta just get off right here is that, you know, there were some filler episodes. There were some fillers episodes to it, and they could have done without some episodes. There were certain episodes where like, alright, this kind of doesn't, we should get more into the plot, and I feel like it does kind of suffer for that, because I feel like a lot of the plot was taken away by these filler episodes, where you could have just kind of tightened it up and knit it down to like maybe 10 episodes instead of 15 or 16. That one episode, I think called Infested, it was just completely a useless episode, and it was right near the ending of the season too, which should have been a series that was setting up, you know, an episode I was setting up the final, and it really didn't, and I didn't really like that episode. That was probably one of, you know, a big filler episode, and I really feel like this show could have used without filler. I feel like too, we didn't really get enough time with Tech or Echo. I feel like they were really cast off to the side. I believe even in the last episode, I don't think Echo even has a single line in the last episode at all. Like, he's really underused. And same thing with Tech. Like, Tech is used a little more than Echo. Like, we have some good scenes with Tech that I like, but he's still just kind of the same that we've seen him from before. He hasn't really progressed, unlike Wrecker and Crosshair and Hunter. Those two are kind of thrown to the side, I feel like. And finally, what I gotta say about the final of this episode, the final episode of it, was kind of underwhelming. I feel like it was good, don't get me wrong, it was a good final episode, but I felt like it could have been more, and it could have gave us a little more, except for that tease with Nala Se and, you know, cloning at the ending and all that. I believe we could have had more in the final. I feel like the filler episodes is kind of what deteriorated from that. But those are pretty much my only complaints of the first season of The Bad Batch. Now, basically, my overall feelings and thoughts of the first season of The Bad Batch is that The Bad Batch first season is surprisingly really good, and probably the best first season of any Star Wars animated, at least animated show. And this show made me a really big fan of the Bad Batch in general, which I wasn't really that much of a fan of at first, and wasn't really excited about the show at first. Now I'm excited for the show. Now I love these characters, and I'm really looking forward to the second season and seasons onward of that. I love seeing the start of the Empire and seeing the Republic form into the Empire in the first days of that, and seeing how the soldiers react to it and how the public react to the Empire changing. I love seeing the ideals placed between the main characters like Crosshair and Hunter, how they have two different ideals. I love that. I do feel like the season could have been a little bit shorter, maybe a 10-episode season, with cutting out some type of filler episodes, cutting those out, and just keeping focus on the main story of the Bad Batch. I feel like would have worked a lot better in the show, and would have gave more room to show more of Echo and Tech and some more of the personalities and kind of traits of the Bad Batch. But as a whole, this first season was great, and I can't wait for the second season of this show. Bad Batch Season 1, I'm going to have to give a 7 out of 10, guys. Yeah, guys, a 7 out of 10 for the Bad Batch, which is definitely my, again, like I keep on saying, my favorite first season of any Star Wars animated show. So let me know down in the comment section below, guys, and let me know your thoughts on the Bad Batch. Did you guys love this first season? Did you didn't like this first season? Were you kind of underwhelmed by the last episode, like me? Or did you love the last episode? Let me know down in the comment section below, and let me know your thoughts. Alright, at that, if you liked this video, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. It helps this channel out. It helps this channel grow and helps the community grow, which is always great. And if you like this video, make sure you guys check out my other videos on my channel. I got a whole bunch of other videos. Just go check it out right on my channel. You'll see probably videos that you're interested in. Until next time, guys, good soldiers follow orders.